Hey everyone, my name is Kevin, and I'm back here to do an analysis of HBO's The Last of Us Episode 2. You can find Episode 1 down in the description, and I want to remind you that these are spoiler reviews/analysis, so make sure you watch the episode beforehand. So this second episode really sets the foundation for what we're going to see with Ellie and Joel going forward, but we also see the end of the road for Tess. At the same time, we also get an intro to some of the infected and their different forms, but Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann are careful to make sure that in these moments, we also build the character dynamics and relationships, and we see into the problems that are going to come up into the future. On somewhat of a different note, though, I want to talk about Ellie's characterization through dialogue. There's a moment early in this episode when she starts asking Joel and Tess for a gun, and they sort of freak out and are like, hell no. But she basically just stops and goes, okay, fine, I'll throw my fucking sandwich at it, I guess. And these snarky moments come up a few times throughout this episode, and in a weird way, you're learning about Ellie's personality, but these comments, they don't really fit the world. And when I say in a weird way, I don't mean that it's bad. I mean, we're seeing uniquely into Ellie's perspective and personality as someone who can't get infected, but also it brings this uniqueness and upbeat nature and some comedy to the scenario to lighten up the mood a little bit. At the same time, Ellie's sarcasm shows us a bit about what Joel and Tess are feeling towards her. Briefly before she asks for the gun, she starts faking and twitching around like she's an infected right after Joel tells her that she's going to shoot her if she twitches a little bit. And so she's obviously a bit risky, but as Tess freaks out and tells her not to do that, Joel gives her this look that I think is multifaceted, and Pedro Pascal does a great job here of showing what I see as some layer of concern, obviously annoyance, but I think the interesting part is that there's also a hint of sadness in there. And I think what this sadness is showing us is that there's a charm within what Ellie is doing that Joel doesn't really want to accept, because he is feeling the pain of his lost daughter and he's seeing Sarah in Ellie. In turn, there is a rift forming between them as Joel doesn't want to accept his fate of taking this kid on this mission, but at the same time, there's an undercurrent pulling them together. Where I think we first really see Joel and Ellie come together is in the clicker scene. And this, holy crap, they did an insanely good job with the clickers. The prosthetics team is miraculous, and even the scene, just the way it was executed, I could feel the same fear that I felt playing the game, and the intensity, the motionlessness that you're just like, oh my God, I'm minutes away from death, even seconds, and you're just like, there's something moving in front of me, and it's like a time bomb about to go off. And they even amplified the scene through a nice stylistic technique. Before they go upstairs to the clicker, they obstruct Joel and Tess's dialogue when Ellie starts asking questions, and this strategically puts us in the mind of Ellie and attaches us to the fear that she is feeling about the unknown that awaits ahead. This clicker scene acts as more than a infected character intro as well. It also shows us how the relationship is building between Ellie and Joel. Joel explains to Ellie how the clickers can't see through their eyes, but they see through their ears. But I think while this is a moment of connection, the thing that really got me in the scene is the part where Joel and Ellie are crawling around that case in the museum. And I don't know if this is just nostalgia from playing the games and all the times you're moving around little bits with Ellie as you're playing as Joel, but I think this is where you really see Joel come into this fatherly role for the first time. From this clicker scene, this is where Tess gets bit and what eventually leads to her death at the end of the episode. But I think an important note to make is that earlier on, we can already see a rift forming between her and Joel. As Ellie survives the night without turning into an infected monster, essentially, you can see that a switch sort of flips within Tess and she becomes more of an optimist. However, Joel, on the other hand, sees this optimism, this hope for the future, as a weakness and as a hole in the armor that he's put up for himself. While Tess is seeing a possible brighter future through Ellie, Joel is still stuck in this idea that's holding him back. If he doesn't see any hope in the world, he doesn't really have to care who lives and who dies, if everything is just going to end up infected and meaningless at the end of the day. As we start to see this shift in Tess, she's really driving this episode. She's pushing back against Joel's flaws. Through Tess's death, Joel has to face a lot of things that he doesn't really want to. He has to face the grief and anger of losing probably the only person that he really cared about in the world anymore, besides maybe Tommy. He also is stuck on her dying wish of saving this little girl for something that he doesn't really have any confidence in. And then at the same time, if he is to accept that mission and accept that there is a future for Ellie, that's only going to make the pain of Tess dying worse, because she will never see the future where there could possibly be a cure. In which case, he has to open up to that sort of vulnerability, but he also has to accept the consequences that his actions matter more now. And if he doesn't take responsibility for Ellie and keep her safe, there could be serious consequences. So I think a lot of this comes back to Joel's fate and his character flaws. He now has to accept that he's failed to protect the people that he loves again, but he's now stuck in this situation where he has to risk doing it all over with Ellie, somebody who reminds him of his daughter. At the end of the day, Joel is flawed by his ties to the past and his grief over his daughter. This keeps him from opening up to love and hope for the future, which keeps him from taking actions to better the world. With Tess giving Joel this mission at the end of the episode, the story is essentially smashing his flaws over his head and forcing him to progress. Without Tess, Joel's weaknesses are amplified, which is going to bring Ellie in to try and help him move forward, while he also tries to help her move forward in different ways as well. Their relationship is fated to make strides, stumble backwards, and wander off in different directions. I think this moment where Joel walks off at the end away from Ellie is kind of the first step in that process, as we're seeing another gap form, and they have to bridge that in the next episode. It's really a perfect setup, and I think it's a great way to keep the show progressing. There's a couple of other notes that I would like to hit on. I think if I had to pick one area I could complain in this episode, it would probably be with the zombie kiss at the end, at least on the zombie side. I wasn't necessarily the hugest fan of this. I think Anna Torv does a great job and portrays her character sort of succumbing to this problem really well. But listening to the companion podcast, it seemed like they were kind of trying to maybe humanize or add some connective elements to the zombies, and I'm not sure that the intention fully landed there for me, but I still think this scene was very technically well done and intricately designed. On a final note, I think in that opener with Christine Hakim, she did just such a good job of portraying the immense terror that comes over somebody who was knowledgeable of this situation. And I think the moment that really hit me with that was when she sits down near the end of the opener and her hand is just shaking uncontrollably on this glass. That was a great moment of not needing dialogue to tell you exactly what's going on. But overall, I think we're off to a wonderful start with The Last of Us in this second episode, and I really only expect great things to come. I think with about 2 hours in, over 2 hours in at this point, there's so much potential to be built out here, and so far we've seen immaculate execution. So yeah, I think we all have a lot to look forward to. But thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed.